Hello everybody, welcome back to Spill the Tea Lou. Yet another match reaction. We have had 2 more matches in the Premier League weekend so far. We're having a grand old time. The matches, the quality has improved. We've actually had some goals. People looked like they knew they were supposed to be on a football pitch. Definitely a drastic improvement on the 12:30 game. So I'm going to be talking about Newcastle and Bournemouth. I am also going to be talking about Leeds and Wolves. Let us start with Newcastle and Bournemouth, okay? If you hear the pages moving in the background, that is of course my notes, because as we know, I have the worst memory in the world. I can't remember all the things. I have to write the things down. But the very first thing I want to talk about was something that happened before the match actually started. So obviously we've spoken a lot together this week about Eddie Howe, about Newcastle, about players, about Anthony Gordon, people, transfers, the whole lot. We've talked, okay? But one of the things that Eddie Howe said in his press conference, or when he was talking on Sky Sports the other day, Sky Sports have reported this, Eddie Howe said, "One thing I'm not going to do is play any player if I don't feel they are 100% committed." Interestingly, Anthony Gordon, who is the top scorer for Liverpool so far this season, was out for this match. He was unavailable for this match with a minor hip problem. Now, I found it very interesting that Eddie Howe says he won't play any player if he doesn't feel they're 100% committed, and then all of a sudden Anthony Gordon has a minor hip problem. So I found that very interesting, but it did mean that Newcastle played without Anthony Gordon. Now, as you guys know, I did believe that Bournemouth were going to win this game. I just think Newcastle have so much going on. I thought Bournemouth have been playing so well. They've been in a great run of form. And I have to say, I did think today Bournemouth were the better team. However, Newcastle definitely played better than I expected. They put up more of a fight than I expected, and they played a lot better than they had played recently. One of the players I thought was really good was Woes. I thought he gave a really good account of himself. I thought he was really trying. He was getting in the positions. He was dangerous. He was involved in attacks, and he was doing his best, and obviously did make a difference in the end, because he was involved in kind of the attack very much so for most of the match for Newcastle. However, Bournemouth were just absolutely on the money today. They were really good. It was fast, it was furious, it was dangerous, it was attacking. And I just thought, while both teams played well, for me, I did feel that Bournemouth had the edge. So while Bournemouth played to the level that I expected, Newcastle played to a much higher level than I had come to expect from them based on their last kind of run of matches. So that's something good. Obviously, they haven't got the result, which is bad, but it's the best I think I've seen them play in quite some time. And again, interestingly, that has happened while Gordon has not been on the pitch. So it's just something interesting. Now, I might be going like 2 + 2 = 5 or whatever, but it feels like that. But Newcastle were very much trying, I felt, not every time, but a lot of the time down the right-hand side. They were going down with Tonali. Tonali was doing his best, right? He was making the runs, he was going down the wing, but then it just wasn't quite coming off. The crosses weren't quite going in. It was going out for corners or goal kicks, or primarily goal kicks, or it was just, he would lose control of it, or the defender would get the ball back. Tonali was very involved. He was very much trying. He was doing his best to build up the play, but just the last little bit wasn't seeming to come off for him. But he was one of the brighter sparks, I did think, for Newcastle. It was kind of like Lewis Hall and Harvey Barnes were sort of linking up on the left, and then on the other side, on the right hand side, you had Asula and Tonali, and in some parts Elanga. I didn't think Elanga had a great game. He had a very small, very good spell for Newcastle, and then he's just gone back to his normal form. He wasn't very good today, I didn't think. I thought Tavernier, I literally wrote down, Tavernier is having a great game, and then I mean literally less than 60 seconds later, Tavernier actually goes and scores the goal. He just gets in front of Livramento. He gets goal side of Livramento, and he's able to just knock it in. It was a really good cross in by Ryan, which I thought was good, because what he did was he actually took on his man and put in a cross. He didn't cut back in, which is what we see a lot of the time with wingers at the minute, and I'm not a fan of that. I like a cross. Just get the cross in. Like, I'm very traditional when it comes to that. I don't see all the inverted stuff and cutting in or whatever. Take on your man, get the cross in. That's what Ryan did. And then, as I said, Tavernier was able to get goal side off Livramento and get the ball in the back of the net. So it was 1-0 to Bournemouth, and I felt, while it wasn't that Newcastle were bad, Newcastle had a good spell, I did feel it probably was on balance right for Newcastle to be ahead. And then Bournemouth just really took over the match. They really, really moved into control. It could have been 2-0 a few minutes later, but Evan Nielsen, I've actually no idea how Evan Nielsen didn't put the ball in the back of the net. I actually think it had to have been harder for him not to put the ball in the back of the net than it would have been for him to score. But somehow he missed it, and it does stay 1-0. And then at the other end, Petrovic has to make an excellent save, a really, really, really good save to keep it at 1-0. Obviously, they go in at half-time then at 1-0. Bruno G comes on in around the 60th minute. It was his first time back on the pitch after 2 months. You could see the reaction from the crowd. You could see the lift in the place, the difference, how important he is. And also you could see the reaction from Bournemouth and from the manager. Because as soon as Bruno G comes on, right, Christie had been very good in midfield for Bournemouth today, but he was on a yellow. And so the minute Bruno G comes on, straight away, Bournemouth are like, right, we need to make a change. And they take Christie off because they're like, we can't have somebody in the midfield against Bruno G on a yellow. That's how you know a player is important. That's how you know somebody's a really key player. As soon as he came on the pitch, the other team had to make a change they weren't going to make otherwise to adapt because they know the impact your player can have. That's a key player. That's an important player. So I think that was a massive compliment to Bruno G. Osula then does get the ball in the back of the net for Newcastle. There was a call for offside. He looked to be offside. They checked he was offside. And then they looked back, and the person who plays the ball through, accidentally, obviously, was Evan Nielsen. So because the last person the ball came off was Evan Nielsen, then he couldn't be offside. So they spent forever checking this. They also then, when they decided, well, actually, no, he is onside because Evan Nielsen is the one who kicked it through, they then decided that they needed to check if there was fouls very thoroughly. And it was a really long check. Now, eventually the goal was given. It was 1-1. I was really pleased for Osula. I thought he had done such a good job in the match today. And I thought if any Newcastle player actually deserved a goal, it was Osula. So I was glad that it was given for him, but they did their darndest to rule it off. They really did their darndest. Then you see Livramento grabs his groin, and I mean immediately he's running, and all of a sudden he reaches down, grabs himself and kind of hobbles. His arm goes straight up in the air. He has to go off. That is obviously concerning for Newcastle for the rest of the season because he's played like a lot. So that is going to be a big miss because, you know, see, as soon as they grab themselves and straight away they're like, take me off, you know, they've felt it. They felt something quite serious. So that's not good for Newcastle. And then it goes 2-1. So Evan Nielsen, after missing what should have been a goal, after playing the ball through for Osula's goal accidentally, he also is involved in this goal for his own team. And so he manages to head the ball down. Byrne and Botman were basically nowhere near him. They start running towards him, but he's already in the air. So the crosses come in, he's already in the air, and it's like at the same moment Byrne and Botman realise there's a player in the middle of their box with nobody near. But he's already in the air. He heads the ball down for Trufford. Trufford puts it in the back of the net. And yeah, I just thought overall, I thought Newcastle were better than they had been. They certainly had spells where they were doing really well. There was a kind of maybe 10 or 15 minutes at the start of the match where Newcastle did look very dangerous, but I think things just weren't quite coming off for them. I thought Osula looked very good. He looked really, really good, so he did. Chinali was trying. Things just weren't coming off. Elanga, not fantastic. And then obviously they've got this injury now to Livramento. But Bournemouth are just absolutely on fire. So Bournemouth now sit in 8th in the Premier League table. They're in 8th. Now, obviously, Everton has to play still and Brighton have to play still. So, and Sunderland. So they can all catch them or overtake them. But the fact that after their match, they're now level on points with Brentford. Bournemouth and Brentford, and we've been singing Brentford's praises, Bournemouth and Brentford are now both on 48 points, haven't played the same amount of matches. The only difference is goal difference. They have a 0 goal difference and Brentford is +4. So Bournemouth are doing a fantastic job, and clearly even after the announcement that Andoni Iraola is going to be leaving at the end of the season, there has been absolutely no drop off whatsoever. And what that tells me is things work behind the scenes. Obviously everybody already knew before the announcement, and that's why it's made no difference. It wasn't a shock to them. So big up to them. Newcastle now sit in 14th. Newcastle are in 14th and Leeds are in 15th. And Leeds have been talked about in terms of having to stay clear of the relegation battle. Now, I'm not suggesting Newcastle are anywhere near or being in a relegation battle, but my point is there's only one place between them and Leeds. So, it's 14th is really not good. It's really not good. Things are clearly just so unsettled at Newcastle. I don't know what they're going to do. I really don't know what they're going to do. I just think Eddie Howe's going to have to go. Whether he decides to go, whether they ask him to leave, whether they mutually decide it, whatever it is, I just think they need a change. I think they just need a change. I think it's run its course and they need to change it. But yeah, I thought it was very interesting that Anthony Gordon suddenly developed a minor hip problem after all of the things that have been said and done this week. However, as I've just mentioned, Leeds did play Wolves today. Wolves had another not very good result. So obviously Leeds had the worst, horrendous, terrible start to a Premier League season. Then they got Rob Edwards in. Since Rob Edwards has come in, they had a major upturn. They've got so many more points on the board. People were thinking, how has this Wolves team been bottom of the table? How have they ended up in this situation? They're not that bad at all, blah, 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 blah. But it feels like since they've come back from the most recent international break, they've just absolutely fallen off a cliff again. Now, today's game was very difficult. Leeds are a difficult team, and I have to say, Leeds is one of the teams where I wonder, how are they 15th? Some of their players are fantastic. Now, I cannot stand his snidey, horrible little face now. Dominic Calvert-Lewin is having an absolutely fantastic season, but he's not the only one for Leeds that's having a brilliant, brilliant season. Like the likes of Aronson. Aronson has also been very, very, very good. Now, he was lucky today because I think on another day he potentially could have got a red card, but we'll talk about all of that now. So, Leeds started super duper well, obviously. Wolves' defence, though, also started really, really well. So, Wolves' defence for the first 15-20 minutes was it felt like they were really, really on it. It felt like they were defending well, they were getting rid of the danger, they were reading it, it felt like they were doing well, they were coping. There was a lot of pressure from Leeds, but Wolves were coping until they weren't. So in the 17th minute, okay, so maybe the first 15 minutes then they were doing well. So in the 17th minute, there was a massive save from the Wolves keeper, a really, really good save. Now, it wasn't their normal keeper. So Sa is their first team keeper. He had a twinge in his back, a back spasm, I think they said on the commentary, but he had travelled, and he was actually sitting in the crowd today. He had travelled all the way down because they really didn't know if he was going to be able to start or not. And it was only just before they had to submit the teams, they made the decision that he wasn't going to be able to play, and their backup goalkeeper played. Brooke, I think was his name. Let me see. Bentley. Brooke. Just lying to you. I'm just completely lying to you. I knew it was a B. So Bentley is the wee chap's name that stood in. But he made a very, very good save. The problem was the rebound ends up being a goal. So he makes the save, and then it goes back out, and there's sort of a bit of a ping ball. It comes to Justin, who does a bicycle kick into the back of the net. It was a very good goal. It was a really, really, really very good goal. Then, literally 2 minutes later, it was literally 2 minutes between these goals. In the 19th minute then, Okafor, assisted by Aronson, made it 2-0. And at 2-0, you're going, oh my dear Lord. I think everybody at that point, 20 minutes in, 2-0 to Leeds, they were all over them. I think at that point, everybody's starting to go, this could be a painful scoreline. You're remembering the 4-0 in the last match, and you're going, how many goals might this be? Thankfully for Wolves, it didn't get that much worse. So Wolves, to be fair to them, they didn't let their heads drop. They didn't let it overwhelm them. They just stuck to what they were doing. They started attacking. They started getting chances. They didn't really look like getting it in the back of the net, but they were certainly giving it a bloody good go. Then Angel Gomez goes down for them injured. They end up having to bring on Mateus Mane in the first half through injury, which obviously when you're planned for a team and you've trained for a team and you've tactics for a team and then the personnel has to change, particularly when it's even in the first half, it does change the way you play the game. But I actually thought Mateus Mane come on and he was very good, and I actually thought they looked a little bit more dangerous in that position when he come on. I thought they were doing a little bit more. But they do, look, they go in at half time 2-0 down. I thought Armstrong had been quite decent for Wolves. I also, as I said, I thought Mane, when he come on for the last few minutes of the half, was quite good. That wee guy, Krejci, he was so involved. He's so involved. You can see he just absolutely wears his heart on his sleeve. But Leeds were just better. They were just better. And see that first period where they were just on them. Like, it was really, really hard. You could see the difference of quality. Okafor was brilliant. He's been in such good form lately. Aronson, I've been talking about Aronson throughout the season. He was very good in the first match we played against Leeds, and I've been watching him ever since. He's very, very, very good, and he's dangerous. And then obviously Dominic Calvert-Lewin, obviously, is having a good season. Horrible little man. But they come out after half time, and to be fair, Darlow in the kind of early 60 minutes had to make a massive save. So Wolves were really, really doing their best to get back into the match. They showed a really good sort of fighting spirit. They showed, it's not as if they weren't trying. It's not as if they weren't in the game. It's not as if they just let their heads drop and rolled over. I don't know what it was. Leeds were just very good. And it just wasn't quite coming off for Wolves. There was a point in the game, and this game was refereed by that new referee, the one that when he had his first match, everybody was talking about him. What is his name? What's his name? Oh, I can't remember him. But anyway, there was a push on the back. So there's a tackle by Krejci on Aronson. Aronson doesn't like the tackle, gets up, puts both hands on Krejci, pushes him. Krejci goes down on the ground, and there's a lot of talk. Is that going to be violent conduct? Is he going to be sent off? Etc, etc. In the end, he was given a yellow. Krejci goes off with a problem with his neck. And so, to be honest, he pushed him both hands. He did push him. But it looked sort of innocuous. But he was definitely injured. You could see his neck was stiff. He couldn't really turn it. Hwang comes on, who's been decent for Wolves anyway. But I thought it was interesting because if you're Wolves, you're wanting the red for violent conduct. If you're Leeds, you're saying, okay, you shouldn't get up and push him, it's a yellow. And I just think there's been so much talk this week about cards and about violent conduct and about contact and about what you're allowed to do and about what you're not allowed to do. And I'll be honest, as a neutral watching it, I thought, okay, yellow's probably fair enough. Like, you know, he didn't mean to hurt him. And it wasn't like he just got up and pushed him in the heat of the moment. However, I thought it was going to be given as a red. Given the reds we've seen this season, given the things we've seen that have been called violent conduct this season, I did think it was going to be given as a red. And it just wasn't. And I just found it curious. Like that, if you're Leeds, you're going, it's definitely not a red, obviously. If you're Wolves, you're asking for it because you're going, well, he stood up and pushed him. That's violent. Surely that's violent conduct. But what it was put down as was a yellow for argument, basically. Now, a few minutes later, Aronson gets subbed off, which I think is a sign that Daniel Farke kind of knew get him off the pitch before he does something else stupid. The fourth official then ended up getting subbed, which I thought was really funny. I don't know why, they didn't announce why, it probably something personal, but the fourth official was subbed off and they announced it on the stadium announcer the way they would announce a normal substitution. And the whole crowd was like, well, hey! But obviously then that took ages because they just swap over all of the like technology where they talk to each other and stuff, which ended up having 10 minutes of added time at the end of that match. And during the end of the match, there's a penalty for guess who? Guess who got a penalty in added time? Dominic Calvert-Lewin. To be fair, he's running through on goal. Bueno kind of puts an elbow in his back. Again, it's not a very hard elbow, but he's in the box and he stuck his elbow in his back. Dominic Calvert-Lewin obviously goes down. Shock horror. He then takes the penalty and he makes it 3-0. I do think Leeds were comprehensively the better team, but I think after the first kind of really bad spell, I do think Wolves were in the game. They also had chances when it was 2-0 to score, and I thought their attitude was really good. Leeds are more or less clear now. There's no way. They're 9 points clear of Spurs. There's absolutely no way Leeds are going down now. They're very, very, very much staying in the Premier League. Wolves are very much going down, but I mean, we already knew that. I'm just curious about what's happened to them since the international break, because they've just come back a completely different team. But guys, that is me. We have more football to watch. I am off to do that, and I will talk to you later this evening, live.